So just back on here and working on the box. So I have to move this fuel flap to the front of the box. And so what I've done so far is taken a piece of cardboard, I cut it perfectly square, I put it on and I traced it all the way around. Then I found my new location and I traced this again all the way around. So I'm going to cut that out, weld that into there, and this piece is going to get welded into there. So stay tuned. All right, so I have the fuel flap moved from the back over to the front. I had originally cut out here to install it, but without realizing that on the inside of the box there's actually a little bump out. Even though this truck never had a fuel flap at the front, there's a bump out in these boxes to make space between the inner box and outer box to be able to fit a fuel filler neck here. So I did have to trim the plastic though. Like if you look, there's still some trimming to be done, but if you put it in the same location as that bump there, you'll make it happen. So now I still have to do a lot of grinding and blah blah blah, but I wanted to get the truck up and running before doing all that body work. I tried taking the patch from over here and putting it in here. The gaps were a little too big. Now I got to sit there and spend a ton of time filling in welds. I've done about half of it. So again, wanted to get the truck up and driving before sitting there and spending that kind of time. I mean, this is kind of a rat rod build, so it's not a big deal in this case. All right, so I'm just working on the hood pins for the 1974 here. Since I've got the intercooler in the front here, and there used to be a support that ran down here to support top to bottom, it's no longer there. I didn't really feel like putting the hood latch on this without that support. Now I could fabricate it up to have this support come out and run down there and back in the bottom, but for this build I decided to go with hood pins. And so I've already got my hole drilled through the hood here, and this is what I've came up with. So the nut for the hood pin I've pressed into this pipe, and I've cut this pipe at an angle in that it sits on the angle on the rad support here. And I've just notched this out and clamp that in and weld it here and on the bottom. And that way it makes up for the height of the rad support in the center and supports those hood pins. So here I've already welded the nut in place. I have the hood pin on, so I'm going to finish working on this one, weld this, weld them to here, and then finish installing the hood pins. All right, so I have the hood pins mounted on. As you can see, it's welded here, welded back there. It's getting solid. So now I'm making the hole in the hood for this side, and one of these Sharpie markers kind of threads in perfectly on this. So now I just have to close the hood like that, and boom, there's my hole. So I'm going to drill that out and then get these hood pins finished up. All right, just finished up the hood pins here. Pull them out on each side. And there we are. So I'm going to paint all this up. I just got it all set up now. And yeah, that's it. Hood pins are done. So I got the machine or the box off the 75 frame, and I've got it stood up right now, and I'm just cutting out all the rotten cross members. The two end ones are still in decent shape. I got to cut that big stupid block they welded to the box, but yeah, I'm just cutting all that rot off, and then I'll be able to put in new cross members once I have it mounted on the new frame. All right, so just working on the exhaust on this Powerstroke here. I'm using 4-inch exhaust to fill in the gap when the box is bolted onto the frame. There's about a 4.5-inch gap between the box and the cab. I decided to fill that with stacks, but in this particular case, because the stacks are filling the gap, I have to run the stacks on the outside of the box instead of typically inside the box. And I can't come up through the frame because that cross member's there. So what I've come up with is I'm going to have the exhaust coming up from the bottom of the box and then out the front of the box, and it's going to connect right in there and Y off to the two stacks. So I have to cut some shapes and angles to make that happen. I'm going to start out with cardboard. I got a scrap piece of that 4-inch exhaust here. I'm going to get my piece, my angles, my shapes cut out of the cardboard, and then I'm going to cut it out of exhaust pipe and make a flange that connects this exhaust to the exhaust coming through the box there. So anyway, I've built these straps here to hold the stacks. You can see on each end. Oop, focus. So they're bolted to the box there. I've just got these brackets tack welded and screwed to the box, but that's going to keep my cross exhaust piece nice and level to the box and keep the stacks looking right. And the stacks, they just slide out of this flange here if I ever wanted to change them or need to replace them because of damage or whatever. But that's my design. I wanted to do the straight cut stacks. I think it looks good with what this build is. But they're just primered right now. I'm going to be painting them flat black, but I think it'll complete the look of this ride. All right, so this is the design I came up with, all welded together. I made this sort of Y or flange that basically will feed the exhaust into the cross pipe and also allow the cross pipe to hang a little lower, and therefore it'll cover more of this gap between the cab and the box. So that's where I am with the exhaust. It was a lot of playing around, a lot of messing about, but I got it done. So this is ready for paint. I'm gonna paint it and then I'll be able to install it on the truck. So the exhaust, I have the 4-inch down pipe, which is then clamped onto this straight section of 4-inch down pipe and then welded to a 90 going up through the box. And I actually put some bracing there, just using the exhaust clamp. It's just held in with self-tappers right now, but I will replace those with bolts. So it comes up through the box and then back around out front of the box, clamped onto that Y I made. And the whole reason for doing that is just to fill in the space between the cab and the box, because there's quite a bit bigger gap there than what the 1975 truck originally would have had. I think it ties the truck in well. I got the 2 black straight stacks. It fits that 4-inch gap, no problem. And there's still a little bit of play here between the cab and the stacks so that you're not constantly hearing the stacks bang against the cab. And yeah, that's kind of how it's looking. It works out nicely. All right, so tonight I'm just hooking up the wiring for the signal and hazards. And I just got that all pinned out here. I used like an old 69 pinout, 69 Mustang pinout I found online to kind of give me an idea. It wasn't exactly the same pinout as this connector, but it was kind of close. And I was able to splice in the 2000 F250 wiring harness to the 75 steering column wiring harness, and it's actually pretty straightforward. Basically you have your 2 green wires here on the 2000 truck. They're together, they go into that same pin, while those 2 green wires splice into the 2 green wires, the white, but they're together too also on this connector. And the same goes for the white blue. There's 2 white blues on the 2000 F250 harness, and there's 2 white blues on the 75. And those are your front, left, and right signals. Also, this blue here, the blue is the power for your signal lights, your front and rear signal lights. And it's blue on the 2000 wiring harness, and it's also blue on the 75 wiring harness. And we have the green here, which is your brake lights. And it is green on the 2000, and it's also green on the 75. That part's pretty straightforward. Even moving on to your hazard flash, which is the white red. It's the white red on the 2000 harness, and it's the white red on the 75. Things change a bit when we get to our rear signal lights. So this is the left rear signal light, and it's a green orange on the 2000 wiring harness, and it's a yellow black on the 75. And if we go to the right rear signal, it is an orange, and it's a red black on the 75. So everything else is pretty much color to color except for those 2. Things change a bit when we get to the horn. I don't have a horn on this steering column yet, but basically this would be the power, your battery power for the horn, And I believe, from what I read online, I haven't tested it, the blue yellow here would be going to your horn. So once I get a horn set up in this truck, I'm probably going to have a horn button in the dash here somewhere, and I'll be able to test that out. But for now, and I'm not sure what this one is. I haven't got that far. Actually, there's no wire on this side of that connector anyway for that, so we won't worry about that. And it looks like there's no power for the yellow side either. Anyway, everything works though as far as signals go with how this is wired. So I have my signal lights, I have my brake lights, everything's looking good like that. So hopefully this saves you looking around on the internet. It's not too tough. All right, I'm almost ready to wrap this up. I've got the 75 connector, as I showed before. Now it's all spliced in properly. Getting ready to tape it all up. But, you know, everything's working good. Can turn the key. Oh, there we go. That works. Now, if you remove this and just unplug the connector, you will have no headlights. And the reason is because when you plug this connector in, it connects these red yellows together, and that'll give you headlights when you turn on your headlight switch. And then when you flick this into high beams, it disconnects the red yellows and connects the red yellow to the gray orange, and that gives you your high beams. So it's kind of like a three-way switch. I'm going to buy a three-way switch and have it do that function, and just have a function between low and high beam, a low high beam switch. But for now, I've just spliced together my high beams on, so that when I turn my headlights on up here, I'll have high beams all the time right now, which on these older trucks is not really a problem, considering everyone is driving around with LED headlights these days anyway. The next thing here is your blue, pink, I guess, is the wiper power. So what I did is I spliced that one into the main power going up to my wiper switch from the 1975. And so that works nicely like that. I don't have a washer spray bottle yet, but it's these little blue and light blue wires here is the washer spray wires. So I can put a switch on that when I'm ready, and that'll be my washer spray. Or I can hook it up to the 75's switch here, which I may do that actually. And anyway, so I'm going to tidy this up. I'm not real sure what the pink wire is. I didn't get into that. I have all the functions I want mapped out. So anyway, this should help some of you out, and maybe save you going through all the work I did. Today I'm working on the front bumper. So what I have is this truck, the 75, was a mud truck, a guy's mud truck, and he had this big heavy duty bull bumper on it. I'm going to run that bumper on this truck again, but again, the 75 frame is not as wide as the 2000, so I got to totally modify how that bumper mounts, and so I'm going to get to that. Also, normally on a 2000 F250, this plate would continue up, but a previous owner had changed the front end of this this F-250 before I had it, so that's why it's cut out there. So I'm going to have to make like an L bracket, I think, that comes from these bolt holes here, comes up here, and then I'll have sort of a flat mounting surface to bolt that bumper on. So I'm going to start trying to figure that out and hopefully get this built. Another thing, I am thinking about cutting this bumper down a bit, maybe, you know, cutting some angles off just to kind of take it from just being such a flat, I don't know, transport looking bumper, and give it a little bit of style with the wider stance and stuff like that. But we'll figure that out after. I kind of look like how you can see right now, a lot of the front tire, I think it looks badass like that. So I maybe want to continue that with the bumper. Okay, so I have plasma cut the old bracing off the iron bumper here. And what I've been doing is building new bracing for the 2000 F-250 frame. So what I've done is I've got this L bracket here, and this is just because my frame is cut up. I've had to do this extra work. But I got this L bracket here, which I'm going to put a cross support in here to stiffen that up for sure, and probably a beam all the way across between the two. But I've just put bolts down through the holes and I've tacked them in place, and now I can lift these off and fully weld those bolts. And I'll also be cutting holes to go into here. Anyway, so once I have the cross member welded across these two new mounts, I will be able to pull that off as one piece and weld these new mounts onto that bumper, and then that bumper will just sit right down. The bolts will slide right through the holes in the frame, and it'll be that easy. And then I can throw some more bolts in through these plates here. And that should be plenty strong once I'm done. So anyway, that's what I'm doing. All right, I just got this bumper mounted. The mount I built for the front of here is just tacked to the big iron bumper, but I want to see how she sits. I'm pretty happy with it. Again, I'm a little undecided if I want to cut this down and show a little more tire at the front. There's a lot of tire showing, but it's looking all right. It's not too bad at all. All right, so I just put a fresh coat of paint on her real quick while she's still hot, baked her on. So this is how I mounted the bracing to the bumper. I pulled out the old glue stick and put some good gobs. Got a little section of square tubing here, welded on the bottom. Big gobs welding the top of the bracing to the bottom of the bumper on both sides. That should be good and solid enough. And so I wanted the bumper to sit slightly higher. I'm a little bit picky, so I'm just making a triple hole washer that's going to slide onto that and just hold the bumper up slightly higher. But yeah, she's gonna work well. Well, it's pretty late out, but I finally got this mounted and it is super solid. I put those washers in on the mounts, so now it's sitting about halfway in that black line on the grill. I think it's sitting perfect like that. So move on to the next thing.